Putin has played him like a fiddle, and it's shown that Putin has all the cards because this war is going on and on. And this president of ours, Trump has indicated that he could end it in a day or two. He hadn't been able to end it. And so I expect him to announce sanctions, quite frankly. We just did a deal with the European Union to continue to supply weapons to Ukraine. I think Trump knows this war isn't ended anytime soon, even though he would like to end it based on his relationships. These relationships haven't gone very well for him, and Putin is still willing to fight because in the end, Putin believes that Ukraine and many of the other territories around Russia should come back under the Russian Federation.
Let me stick with you for a second, because this week it appeared that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth froze weapons shipments to Ukraine without approval from Trump. Of course, that's raising questions about the coordination between the White House and the Pentagon. What are your thoughts there?
Well, it raises questions about the competence of the current defense secretary. He's not only controversial, but he's been raised questions in regard to whether he is really the right person for the job. His approach to the soldiers and being a soldier's DOD defense secretary is admirable, if you will, but his skill set is very limited as someone who was essentially in the infantry. And so as a result, you've got these miscommunications, you've got this misleading information, you've got the use of communications that aren't secure. And so it just has not been an easy ride for him. And so maybe it's coordination, maybe it's competence. I think it's a little bit of both. Cuomo is an interesting political candidate for the mayor's race. Mondani beat him in this kind of valued voting system New York has. I would think just the opposite. I would think Cuomo is getting in because the current mayor is running as an independent, and both are middle of the road or moderate Democrats, if you will. And if you split this vote, even with this tenured voting, if you will, if you split the vote, then you need less to have the majority in New York City. And so you could win with 30%, maybe 25% or more, as splitting the vote with three viable candidates. And so I tend to disagree with that strategy with Cuomo. But again, this is new. We need to hear more, and I'm open to hearing more. But Cuomo's got a political following in New York, and so does the current mayor. And Mondani certainly does, and is very popular with young people. This is shaping up to be a really, really interesting race that most of the country are going to be watching, because do the Democrats go further left, which most don't think they should because 80%, 70% of Americans are in the middle, or do they go back to Cuomo, who's a deeply flawed candidate, or the current mayor that's a deeply flawed candidate? It's going to be interesting to watch. MAGA and Trumpism drive that negative narrative about political violence. Now, political violence should never be acceptable on either side, quite frankly. And I concede with my colleague that sometimes the Democratic rhetoric can be just as bad. But it all needs to be toned down. We are such a divided country, despite all of us wanting to be in the center and all of us wanting to have the best for America. And so as a result, I believe the Donald Trump assassination attempt, not one but two, is indicative of that violence and how divided we are. And so when the Democrats and Republicans talk about unity, each side needs to manifest that unity and take action steps to do so. Right now, you get the rhetoric once we see the political violence, but in the interim, we're still very divisive and have this hyperbole rhetoric when it comes to politics and our differences.